I want you to mentally rewind for a second to February 2020. Do you, do you remember the specific feel of that month?
Vaguely. It felt normal, I guess. Maybe a little bit of noise in the background if you were paying attention.
Right, but that's my point, the disconnect. The stock market was hitting all-time highs. People were booking summer flights. You were probably, in a crowded restaurant not thinking twice about any of it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were really deep online, if you were following the right epidemiologists on Twitter, you could see the charts just going vertical.
It was that phony war feeling. The disruption was already baked in. The physics of it had already determined what was coming, but it just hadn't hit the public yet.
Exactly. And the reason I'm bringing this all up is because of the source we're doing our deep dive on today.
Mm-hmm.
It's an article that came out yesterday, February 11th, 2026, by Matt Shumer.
He's an AI founder, an investor. He's got, serious skin in the game.
And his whole argument, his thesis, is that we are right back in February 2020. Right now.
That is a huge claim. I mean, we've been hearing AI changes everything for, 3 years now? It starts to feel a little bit like crying wolf.
I thought the same thing.
No.
But Schumer's point is that we are in the this seems overblown phase of something way, way bigger than the pandemic. And he points to one specific date that just happened, February 5th, 2026, as the moment everything changed.
And that's what we need to unpack. Because if he's right, then this feeling of normalcy we have right now is, it's an illusion. We need to look at what actually happened last week.
With the release of OpenAI's GPT-5.3 Codex and Anthropic's Opus 4.6.
Yeah, and why Shumer thinks this gap between what the public thinks and what the tech can do has actually become dangerous.
So let's start with this water rising idea he uses, because for the last year, through 2025, AI progress felt, kind of steady. Absorbable?
It was linear. It felt linear. You'd get a slightly better chatbot. It could write a slightly better poem. It was a tool. You picked it up, you used it, you put it down.
But Shumer says February 5th broke that pattern. He says it wasn't a light switch. It was more like, and I'm quoting him, the realization that the water has been rising around you and is now at your chest.
And the specific change with GPT 5.3 Codex and Opus 4.6 is this shift from just following instructions to something that looks an awful lot like judgment.
You got to define that, because judgment is a human word. We're told AI is just, predicting the next word in a sentence. It's a fancy parrot.
That's the old model. The parrot model is, I ask for code, it gives me the most statistically likely code. But with these new ones, Shumer is seeing them make choices. Choices based on some kind of internal sense of quality. They're not just doing what you tell them, they're figuring out the best way to do it.
He gives this anecdote about building an app that it really made this concrete for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be skeptical because he runs an AI company. Of course he's going to hype the tech. But the details are they're unsettling.
The app that built itself story.
Exactly. So on Monday, he just describes an app he wants in plain English. I want a dashboard with these features, make it look like this, the usual stuff. But then he just walked away from his computer for 4 hours.
And that's the part that's new. In 2024, maybe 2025, you could never walk away. You had to sit there, copy-pasting code, fixing the bugs, telling it, no, you forgot the login button. You were the human in the loop.
Right. But he comes back 4 hours later. And the AI hasn't just written the code. It has, opened the development server, it launched the app, it's clicking the buttons itself, testing the features like a QA person would.
It's acting like an agent. It's interacting with its environment, not just a text box.
But this is the part that really got me. He said the AI apparently didn't like the way one of the menus looked. It decided the design was clunky. So it went back into the code, rewrote it, redeployed it, and then tested it again.
It iterated on its own work without a human prompt.
That's the judgment. That's the taste he's talking about. The AI had some internal standard for what's good, and its own work didn't meet that standard, so it fixed it.
So the human in the loop is not doing the work anymore.
No, the human is just making the request at the very beginning.
We're moving from human in the loop to maybe human on the loop, or for big chunks of time, human out of the loop.
Mm-hmm.
Shumer says the AI only pinged him when it was satisfied with the final product. It didn't need a junior developer, it didn't need a QA tester, and it didn't need a designer to say, this looks bad. It was all three.
It was the entire team.
Mm.
But how? I mean, what changed?
Yeah.
Why these models? Why now?
Okay, so this gets us to maybe the most important part of this whole deep dive. There's one specific sentence in OpenAI's technical docs for GPT-5.3 Codex that Shumer
I
flags.
have it right here. It says, GPT-5.3 Codex is our first model that was instrumental in creating itself.
Instrumental in creating itself, we just need to sit with that for a second.
It sounds like something out of a movie. The machine that builds the machine.
It's recursive self-improvement. But let's take the sci-fi stuff out of it for a minute and just think about the engineering. What it means is they used older versions of the AI to debug the training data for this new version. They used the AI to help design its own architecture.
So the AI is now the AI engineer.
In a very real sense, yes. And that creates a feedback loop. Because if your AI helps you build a smarter AI, well, that smarter AI is now even better at building the next one.
This is what Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, calls the intelligence explosion.
Yes. And Shumer quotes him saying, we are maybe 1 to 2 years away from the current models autonomously building the next generation of models.
I'm just helping.
Not just helping, doing the core research and engineering on their own. And if you have a system that improves itself, the timeline just collapses. 10 years of progress can happen in, what, 6 months? A year?
And that's why he feels like the water is suddenly at his chest.
The curve just went vertical.
Okay, let's just take a breath here. Because if you're listening to this and you're feeling a little bit of vertigo, like the ground is shifting under your feet, you are not crazy. This is a lot to take in.
It is. And the news cycle is so full of hype, it's really hard to separate the signal from the noise.
That is exactly why we do this show. We read the technical papers so you don't have to. And if you want us to keep delivering these deep dives straight to you so you don't miss the big shifts, just do us a favor and hit that subscribe button on our channel right now. We're going to be tracking this every single week.
And honestly, on this topic, you really can't afford to be 6 months behind.
So let's talk about the skepticism. Because Shumer gets this. He says he talks to his friends and family and they say, yeah, I tried ChatGPT, it wrote a bad poem for me, got a math problem wrong.
The "it wasn't good before" argument.
Totally. And I get it. We've all used versions that just made stuff up. Why should we believe this time is any different?
Shumer's argument is that the public is judging the future of this tech by looking at artifacts from a different era. He says it's like judging the potential of the smartphone by looking at a flip phone from 2005.
But people are using these tools today. They're not using flip phones.
Are they, though? This is the huge divide between free tier and paid tier. If you're using the free version of any of these tools, you are using a model that's usually a year old, and it's been shrunk down to be cheap to run. You are basically playing with a museum exhibit.
So the free users are living in 2024, and the people paying $20 a month are living in 2026.
That's a perfect way to put it. The gap between the free model and the best model, like Opus 4.6, isn't just a little better anymore. It's exponentially more capable. It can reason in ways the old ones just couldn't.
He tells this story about a managing partner at a big law firm. This isn't some tech bro. He's a 60-year-old lawyer.
Right. His world is billable hours and being right.
And he tells Shumer he's using the paid AI models for hours every single day. He says it's like having a team of the smartest associates on the planet available instantly. He's not writing emails with it. He's using it to build case strategies.
For high-level cognitive work.
And his prediction was just blunt.
Yeah.
He thinks the AI will soon be able to do most of what he does, not just his junior staff, what he does with decades of experience.
And that slides right into the economic impact, because we usually think of automation as this thing that hits the bottom of the ladder,
Yeah.
data entry jobs or something.
But this guy is at the top of the ladder.
Exactly. And if he can now do the work of 5 associates with this tool, he isn't hiring 5 new associates out of law school next year. He might hire 0.
Which brings us to the MEPR data. This is an org that actually measures what these things can do, so it's not just anecdotes.
And the METR data is terrifying because of the slope of the line. So a year ago, the best AI could reliably do a task that would take a human expert maybe 10 minutes.
Okay, like summarize this short article or write a simple bit of code.
Exactly. But with Claude Opus 4.5, which is already out of date as of last week, it could handle tasks that take a human expert 5 hours.
Wait, what does a 5-hour task even look like?
Think of a whole workflow, like read this 50-page contract, identify the 3 biggest risks, draft a response to those points, and then write me a memo explaining the strategy. That's a 5-hour job for a junior lawyer. The AI can do that now, end to end.
And what's the projection?
The capability is doubling every 4 to 7 months. So if we're at 5 hours today, then in about a year, we're at tasks that take 5 days. An AI could work on a project for a whole week, totally on its own.
That lines up with Dario Amode's prediction about jobs. He said AI will eliminate 50% of entry-level white-collar jobs.
Within 1 to 5 years, Schumer thinks it's closer to 1.
50%. That's not a recession. That's a complete rewiring of our society.
It is. He lists the obvious ones: legal, finance, coding, even medicine. These were the safe jobs, the ones you went to college for.
It makes me think of the new country thought experiment he mentions. He credits Amode with it. And it's the only way I've been able to get my head around the scale of this.
It's a really powerful way to frame it.
So imagine it's 2027, next year. A new country just appears on the map overnight. Population, 50 million.
But these aren't normal citizens. Every single person in this country is smarter than a Nobel Prize winner. They can think 100 times faster than a human, they never sleep, and they can control anything connected to the internet.
If you're the president or a CEO or anyone in power, how do you respond to that country appearing out of nowhere?
It is the single biggest threat and opportunity in human history. It's completely destabilizing. That country would outcompete everyone on Earth, instantly.
They could cure cancer in a year. They could solve climate change.
They could compress a century of scientific progress into a decade, but they could also design a perfect bioweapon. They could crash the global financial system for fun.
They could build a surveillance state you could never escape.
And the point that Amode and Schumer are making is, we are building that country. Right now, it's not on a map, it's in data centers. The citizens are the AI models running on all those GPUs.
And Schumer's argument is that the first ships from that new country just landed on February 5th.
Yes. That judgment and taste you were talking about before, that's the sign. These are the early immigrants from the new country.
Okay, so that's the picture. The water is rising, a nation of digital super geniuses is coming online, and if you're listening, you're probably bouncing between this is incredible and I need to go buy a cabin in the woods.
The off-the-grid strategy, yeah.
But Schumer's advice is actually very practical. He says, don't panic, be early.
Panicking is useless. Being early gives you leverage.
So let's run through his actual advice. Step 1 is simple. Pay the $20.
It sounds almost silly, but it's the most critical thing. Stop using the free versions. You have to experience what the real thing feels like, not the museum piece. Go into the settings, make sure you're using GPT-5.3 or Opus 4.6. If you aren't paying, you are literally blind to what's happening.
Step 2, give it real work, not just Google searches.
Right. Stop asking it, what's the capital of France? Throw your messy work at it. Give it the horribly formatted spreadsheet. Give it the 50-page PDF and ask it to find the internal contradictions.
You have to push it until it breaks.
Exactly. That is the only way you'll learn what it can actually do. If you treat it like a toy, it acts like a toy. If you treat it like a brilliant intern, it will act like one.
And then step 3, the 1-hour rule.
It's just discipline. 1 hour every single day. You experiment with it. You don't read articles about AI. You use it. Schumer says if you do that for 6 months, you will be ahead of 99% of people because they're all still stuck in that it seems overblown phase.
He also mentions getting your finances in order.
Which is always good advice, but especially now. Cash gives you options. If your industry gets hit by that 50% disruption, you're going to need a runway to figure out what's next.
And finally, education. What do we tell our kids?
The safe path is an illusion now. A job based on memorizing information is worthless when you have an oracle in your pocket. The skill is adaptability. It's using these tools to build and create things.
And that's the hopeful note he ends on, right? The barriers to creation have basically dropped to zero.
This is the empowering part. If you have an idea for an app, you can build it. Now, this weekend, you don't need to be a coder. This new country of AI citizens can work for you if you learn how to be a good manager.
So to wrap this all up, Schumer's core message is that the future didn't arrive someday. It arrived last week.
And we're all just living in the lag time before everyone else figures it out.
I want to leave you with one final thought from the source. Schumer points out that if an AI shows just a tiny hint of a new capability today, like that judgment or taste we talked about, the next version will likely be perfect at it.
That's the nature of exponential curves.
So if today's machines are just starting to show a hint of taste, if they can look at something and have a sense of whether it's good, what does that mean for us? Our whole identity has been, sure, computers are logical, but humans have soul. We have taste.
But what if taste is just another form of high-dimensional pattern recognition? Then maybe we aren't as special as we thought.
And if we're not the only ones with a sense of quality, then who are we?
That's the question we're all going to be grappling with for the next decade.
Thanks for diving in with us. Stay curious and stay early.
See you next time.